Our experience in Wales is one of this excellent vision within the political base as you know, groundbreaking legislation. I guess we need to see that trickling through to the key civil servants and decision makers. So not the elected members, not the politicians, but the people on the ground who are making those choices on behalf of the electorate through their civil servant position. They need to be held more to account. They need to be pushed to actually embed what the legislation demands, so that when it comes to a procurement choice, when it comes to A or B, I take more money or I take something which has longer future generational impact, then the nudge is always to what has long-term future generational impact, not what gives the best cash receipt today. So that's, if we can get that sort of movement, I think we'll see a lot more change. What we'd like to see is the approach, which is pretty much putting people at the centre of building or designing or developing their own built and natural environment. So why shouldn't children be involved in the design and build of a school? Why shouldn't the curriculum in part be delivered practically, vocationally, through children actually either designing, building or looking after their school campus? Why shouldn't hospitals be built or looked after through a rehabilitative approach? So if we can prove that you can get much more effective neurorehabilitation through this approach, then why wouldn't neurorehabilitation on a hospital campus be done through that approach? You can take it and scale it, and you can apply that person-centered, nature-centered approach to all infrastructure. And if we did do that, and we flipped what the experience was of people having that built environment, so rather than it being presented to them as, this is your hospital, this is your school, this is your community centre, this is your house, if you put the community at the centre of developing that, embedding the use of natural materials, looking at houses, infrastructure that is a net contributor of renewable energy, so net energy producer, and net biodiversity gain, something that is effectively a regenerative approach, then you could transform Wales radically for the improvement of people and nature in quite a remarkable way. We've always tried to ensure that the people we work with are at the very centre of their experience. So there was nervousness, yeah, as we grew, that maybe people wouldn't get as much from it. So if we shift from, say, laying a hedge or building a building with earth like this one behind us to let's build a hospital, that's a massive shift. And within the team there was definitely concern or nervousness that maybe people would feel remote from their experience, but actually we found it's the opposite. So the more ambitious the vision, the more people seem to get from it, the more people feel believed in and trusted. And I guess that's been a really important part of our journey, is to give people more than maybe you might ordinarily feel personally comfortable with. And the experience of a lot of the people we work with is one of not being trusted, not being believed in. And as soon as you say to people, this is your house, I trust you to build it, I'm not going to take it down when you go, is very empowering for individuals. So you can apply that way of working across any platform, and you can apply it to any form of infrastructure or service development, and that belief in people is what brings about the change. To get to where we need to be requires a leap of faith and requires imagination, and I think we need more of that. So, you know, if we sort of roll back 10, 20 years and you describe things that we take for granted now, like mobile phones and the impact of the internet, there are things that maybe we couldn't have imagined back then would have the impact they've got right now. So we need to embed that way of thinking and to be bolder and believe to see this change actually happening. So that requires sometimes maybe people in influence or people who've got power actually taking a punt and seeing, well, maybe it won't work out, but actually maybe it will. And surely what we need to see, if we're going to shift away from business as usual, we need to be doing things that are radically different to what we're familiar with right now. And if we're not prepared to do that, then we're simply not going to get the change we need to see happening. I'm sure change will happen, but quite incrementally and really rather slowly, and probably not at the speed of change we need to see happening. And as long as you've got the evidence base, which we have in abundance, then why wouldn't you take a punt to scale?
I suppose this is my biggest thing I've learned, is that you can, and you should, you have to trust the people who live in a place to make the best balanced judgments about its use, and that is trust, and not an agency who is scripted to maximise income or a particular wood fibre output, and they do that very well within their remit. That's what they do. Whereas you can trust a community to make the balanced, the nuanced and balanced judgments about how a landscape is used. But and that strikes me as very similar to what you were saying about the person who's going to live in a house makes a different judgment about how that house should be designed and how it should be built and what it should feel like, compared with and I'm going to be maybe harsh here, a director of a corporate building firm who sees it as a unit to maximise profit.
Absolutely.
And that's a very different.
Yeah,
it's a very different world.
It's not a unit.
Yes.
And I think that language is very different, isn't it?
I mean, so the communities we've been working in, the post-industrial communities of the South Wales valleys, these are, they are defined recently. I mean, you go back in history, they weren't, but for the last 150 years, they've been coal mining. They've been coal mining and heavy industry towns, and now they're post-industrial and that is the definition of the town. That's in everybody's self-awareness and belief. And one of the images that I quite like, I borrowed it. It's come from another organisation, Wood Knowledge Wales. We try and make forest towns. These are not ex-mining towns, they're future forest towns. We're giving a new narrative, a new story where the town, not everyone in the town, but a lot of the town can have a connection with its landscape, can create jobs, can create building materials, can grow food, can create energy. And it's a new definition of what that community's relationship with the landscape is. Not a negative one of post-industrial, used to be. Now it's providing a new image, a new vision. So you've got something that's concrete and real, and you're building more houses, and that will then people's belief. They don't have to trust that you're right; they can see that you're right.
Yeah, exactly.
And once we've got the Rhondda Skyline project up and working in Drurba, I think there'll be a path will be beaten to its door from every valley. They'll all be coming to look. So what have you done? How did you do it? If you guys can do that, we can certainly do it. And it's that sense of belief, which has been squeezed out, I think, a lot. It's not a single solution that landscape stewardship can offer. It's an ability for people to use that asset to fulfill whatever their vision is. And it'll start small, but it might end up in a really profound way. The huge increase in civic engagement that happens in communities that own their own landscape. So voting goes up, volunteering goes up, engagement with other organisations. It's just, you can measure it. And if a community has ownership or stewardship of their land, then everyone is more engaged in civic society. Difficult to measure. You can't put a cash benefit on that, but it sounds like a pretty good thing.